Hello and welcome to Eye on Oakland. I'm Chuck Moss, your host, and we've got a great show. We have one of my favorite people, Martin C. Brook, who is the Bloomfield Township Clerk. And I'll just jump right in here. Welcome back. Another year, another election. And I'm not on the ballot, so I can be objective about this, so it's no worries. So real quick, hardball question. What's going on?
Good morning, Chuck. Thanks for having me on the show. Again, I enjoy this very much and spending time with you as always. Well, it's presidential primary election season. February 27th is the actual date of the election. But, those matter less these days because for the 9 days in advance of that, we have early voting, which for most people will be the first time they've done that. We did do early voting in this past November for the Bloomfield Hills School District election, but not everybody in the township participates. So this will be the first shot for everybody. It's 9 days of early voting at the Bloomfield Township Library, which is really important to me to have a site for early voting right here in the township. It's at the Bloomfield Township Library. 2 Saturdays before the election is when it starts, and it's 8:30 to 4:30 every day, except for Thursday, it's noon to 8:30. So we now have essentially 9 election days. And we'll see how many people participate in that. But the library is a wonderful location for it, great facility. And that's just the beginning. I mean, there's so many more things going on that are new these days for elections that people will see. Besides early voting, for instance, if you're an absentee voter, you used to have to come in and surrender your absentee ballot. But starting this election, you can take that absentee ballot, bring it to early voting or election day, and run that actual ballot through the tabulator yourself, as if you're voting with a precinct ballot. So no longer is there a difference. You don't have to come in and surrender an absentee ballot and get a new ballot, but you can prepare it in advance, fill it out in advance, bring it into the precinct or early voting site and run it through the tabulator yourself. I think that's the best of both worlds. You can spend time at home with your ballot, going through it, fill it out in advance, and also run it through the tabulator yourself, which I like to do, and I know a lot of other people do too.
Well, this is the biggie. I mean, this is all the marbles in this election, and I think it's an historic one. So you're ready? I got a question. Of all the things that are new, or at least that we've done new, have you seen any real, what the practical differences between the election with all the different stuff thrown in, the new things, and the ones before?
Well, there's one very practical difference is that there's a lot more for clerks to do.
Yeah, no one ever did anyone ask you guys before they put this on, that the guys that have to actually make it work?
Right. Yeah. No one asked, and they don't ask, can it work? So there are some, a handful of issues that the state, county, and local clerks are still working through to make sure items that are in the statute will work. We've got workarounds ready to go, but it'd be better if some of the things were more smoothly programmed by the state into the qualified voter file or QVF. But we're going to make it work, and we're going to get all these deadlines met. But it is more work for all the clerks, and I've met hundreds of them, and it's really a dedicated group of public servants. Some elected officials, like townships, like myself, and some are career public servants in cities, for instance. That's an employed position. But by the way, this 2024 is an election year, not just for, say, president or Congress, but it's also an election year in the township. The full board of trustees, all 7 members, including the supervisor, treasurer, and clerk, myself, are up for election this year. And if anybody's interested in knowing about what the requirements are and filing deadlines, that information is posted on the Bloomfield Township elections webpage that we just posted a couple weeks ago. So that's a great place for people to go if they're interested in learning more about running for election. Now, I think that there's another item here. Chuck may have technical difficulties. So another item that I want to mention that's really important is election workers. Township clerk's office is busy. We've got a lot of volunteers in here working. But election day is not going to happen if we don't have election workers. And we need some more election workers for this February 27th. So if anybody's interested, call my office. We need election workers. The number would be 433-7702, 248-433-7702. And we'd love to get you signed up to be an election worker. If you've got questions about elections, you want to participate, you don't have any questions about them, this is a great way to give back to the community and spend time with your neighbors and friends. A lot of people who start it they end up sticking with it for a long time. In fact, we have had some folks recently recognized by the Board of Trustees for serving for 40 years in one case. Many of them are 20 years and longer. So,
well, Bloomfield Township has always been known for its honest and well-run elections. I mean, you've been proverbial for that, and so that you have a great record and also a lot to live up to. I know
I'm thrilled to have the opportunity, and you're absolutely right about that. My predecessors have created a great foundation. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to be clerk and to continue that legacy and enhance it the best I can.
Well, in this day and age or whatever, is election integrity is always front and center. So I'm sure you have a lot of built-in safeguards so that if someone comes along and says, "Now wait a minute, somebody won by 10 votes or something," you'll be able to come back and say, "No, it's all good." What are some of those safeguards?
Well, there's a lot that I could go into, and I want to highlight a couple of items that are newer. For ballot security and equipment security. So with regard to ballots, they're here in my office actually right now. They're just off the screen. And my team is busy issuing absentee ballots that will be mailed out next week. Now, in the interim, when we're not here, they are locked up. They're not simply left out for other staff or janitorial staff to see. But those ballots are locked and secured. Also, the election equipment is maintained in a locked and secured area. It's tested twice before it's used on election day, once called a public accuracy test. And that's the same. But also now, the equipment will be delivered in a locked cabinet and not unlocked until election morning. That's an additional level of security. Previously, they are brought to locations, left in a closet, locked closet sometimes, and other times not. They're tagged to know if there's been tampering, but now they'll also be locked up. So not only is there a tag to identify tampering, but there is a lock to ensure that there isn't any tampering. Now,
I've been back sort of in the back room, at the township in your office, and you got more holding lockup cells than the cops do.
We do.
Yeah, it's like, I wonder what did these ballots do? Were they drunk and disorderly or something? It's one thing I want to hit, because I know this is an issue. People have talked to me about it, and I'd like to get this issue off the table. Is that you often have things called overvotes. You have more votes cast than people live there, and that is a natural thing for anybody who wants to say, "Oh my God, it's voter fraud," but it isn't. Why not?
Well, it's a couple of really important reasons. The number of votes or overvotes that can occur is, first, overvote is used when someone votes for more than the allowed number of positions on the ballot. So if you could vote for 7 trustees on the Board of Trustees and you vote for 8, that's an overvote, and that won't count. There is questions that come up concerning the number of people who register in the township and the number of people who the census say live here. And you and I, Chuck, have talked about this in great detail. The census numbers estimate the number of people who are 18 years of age and older. The voter registration records are not an estimate, it's an actual. And the numbers don't necessarily match because of a variety of other reasons. The census numbers count people who do not actually necessarily, or don't count people who are voting here. So a student could be away at college, they vote here if they desire, or they can register at school, their choice. If you're doing the census, they are counted at school. Now, of course, we have a lot of young folks in this area who are still voting here and are away at University of Michigan and so forth. There's other differences. So the census numbers and the voting, the registration numbers are just really so completely different. But I'm confident in the accuracy of our numbers. They're something we have to constantly work on, and we do. The other thing I want to mention is there's two numbers. We have, all voters in the system, plus we have a lot of voters who are inactive. So make sure when you're comparing the two numbers between, say, a census number and the number of registered voters, you're using the active voters list. There are people who we know have moved, but legally we have to put them in a countdown, which is they must miss two federal elections, essentially a 4-year period, before they're removed, even though we know they've moved out of state. That's a federal law. Nothing we can do about that anywhere in the state of Michigan or anywhere in any other state. Bottom line, though, I want to mention, voter registration records are your personal responsibility. We do what we can at the state, local level, and the county level to use our resources to identify those people who have moved. But bottom line, if you're going to change your cable bill and you've changed your taxes, you really should be changing your voter registration right away and not waiting until election day. That's going to help everybody.
Well, I may have to change my internet connection at this point, but yes.
Welcome back.
Yeah, well, this is great. I for all you who are watching, I've been having some technical difficulties and going in and out. And I think this unfortunately may prove that the host is the most dispensable person of the show. Just record me coming on saying, hello and welcome to Eye on Oakland, and then way going out and thank you all for being here. And I would just let you guys keep going. It might be a better show after all.
I notice when you go off, and so I go on to another topic.
You're doing great. You're doing great. Like I said, this is
thank you.
We're old veterans, fortunately. So now we talk about mail-in votes. Another issue that people will bring up is that there are inherent issues with the mail-in. You don't know who filled out the ballot, which may or may not be a problem now with all the constitutional changes. You don't know if there was undue influence. You don't know any of those stuff. Is there any issue, or is that something we just kind of don't care about anymore because that's just the way it is?
Well, look, people are supposed to fill out their own ballot. It's illegal to gather in a group and fill out absentee ballots together as a group. It's illegal to have someone you don't know deliver your absentee ballot to the drop box. And we have cameras on all the drop boxes that we can review if necessary, and if there's questions that come up. But everybody who signs the envelope and returns their absentee application will have the signature reviewed, and they are attesting that they voted this ballot without anyone else's influence. Now, if they've had some help, there is a spot on the form for that as well, where individuals are supposed to declare that they provided some assistance, which is permissible. Individuals may need assistance for a variety of very legitimate reasons.
I know that my mother would always ask me whom I'm voting for in the election, so she could vote for the exact opposite. But that's okay. Sometimes she'd make an exception and support me, and sometimes she wouldn't. But the deal is that now we have a question here. Is that I'll shift gears? Is that we all have the different districts now. For years and years, your state representative, your state senator, we're all Birmingham, Bloomfield, and all around. We now have different districts in the township, like part of 5 different districts and different county commissioner districts. So did that make any difference at all, or is it just a matter of counting the votes and putting them in the right slots?
Well, from our standpoint, the process of issuing ballots and counting the votes, it didn't make any difference at all, because the lines were drawn to match the pre-existing precincts. And that's important. If they draw the lines and don't pay any attention to the precincts, then it does create a lot of complexity for voters and the precinct workers, because there could be 2 different or more ballot styles per precinct. That didn't happen, so there's really no administrative difference. I have heard, though, many point out that having us being a part of 5 different House seats reduces the township's voice. Instead of enhancing it, but this has just been the first time we've dealt with that. As you know, Chuck, there's a federal court case that's ordered the Citizens Commission to redraw districts around Detroit. Ours was not specifically mentioned, but there's really no way they can redraw those districts without affecting us as well. And we'll see what happens in the next couple of months.
Oh, yes. I'm paying very close attention to what they're going to draw and what the districts may well be going forward. Yeah. And you're absolutely correct that I'll just say this as someone who represented both a county commission district and a state rep district. The township is the biggest dog. And when the township, as you know, and the township and its leadership spoke, your elected representatives listened very, very, very closely. And now, if you're all split up into 5 and you might be a little bit of one and not much of the other, you don't have the clout you had when you were the one biggest dog biggest dog on the block. So that's just the thing. But yeah, who knows what those new districts will look like and what might come from them. Yeah. Anyway, but just want to add, as a question is that we've got, we're talking about the districts. It makes no difference. We do know that Bloomfield Township was always known, I can tell you this, for getting the results in early. Because, like if I'm on the ballot, I want to know soon enough how the election's going. You guys were always first. Now, there was a little glitch in 20, and that was not your fault. I know that. But you kept me up all night biting my nails. But nonetheless, you're always known for getting your election, your results in early. I assume that's because you guys are more efficient.
Well, we've got a lot of experienced election workers that have been doing this a very long time, and that makes all the difference in the world. And we rely on them. They're wonderful. They are township residents. Some of them are no longer township residents, but they drive back because they really love doing it. So you can work in elections just in any jurisdiction, just as long as you are a registered voter in the state of Michigan and you're 18 years of age.
Well, now
you're 17 too, but with a parent's permission. So
right.
that's really what gets it done. I mean, I play a role, of course, as the leader, but it's the citizens that are engaged and involved that know this and make a real serious contribution to the efficiency of our process.
Well, you mentioned the big V word, or volunteers, and that's your real army. I mean, that's the army to get this all done. How many people do you have working and helping? How big an operation is it? It's like planning D-Day, I mean, tell me, how do you do it?
Well, it's between 175 and 200 plus people are working on election day and beforehand during early voting. There's an additional 15 to 20 people working in my office. They started 2 weeks ago. Right now, actually, I think there's a dozen individuals who are here. There is pay involved, but they're really doing this as a civic service. So there's a dozen to a dozen and a half people preparing all the absentee ballots, checking them when they go out, checking them when they come back in, and then roughly 200 additional people on election day to process all the voters.
Now, anybody, obviously wants to volunteer. I have a feeling you could probably always use more volunteers. First of all, how do you train them? I mean, assume they don't just walk in and you throw them, here you go. You've probably got training. You've probably got ways to give people experience other than the folks who are veterans. What is someone who volunteers, how does that work?
Oh, that's a great question. So yes, we do. We do provide training here in the township. If it's your first time ever, there is training for you specifically. It gives more details about that. And there's two options, a daytime one and an evening time option. If you're more experienced and you want to get be more engaged in what's happening that day, you can be trained to perform the electronic poll book, or Station 2, which is the critical task, and individuals kind of raise their hand for that. And there's additional training for the electronic poll book. And after years, and if you distinguish yourself, then we can bring you on as a chairperson. There's 2 chairpersons in each precinct, one Democrat, one Republican. And those are individuals who have experience in the precinct and other roles already. A variety of amount of experience, and they receive additional training on top of the other trainings. All of them are done here in my office or another conference room here, and all of them have a variety of times available for people to pick from. Now, on top of it, look, I mean, we really need people, and more than they need us, we need them. If people can't get training on the times available, it is common that my staff will do an individualized training as well.
Now, there's a serious question. I'm sure you're prepared for it. If someone wants to volunteer and sees the show, how do they do it? How do they contact you?
Oh, yes. So I'm happy to go through this again. If I get one person, 10 people, I would be wonderful.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Bloomfield Township.
We're going to put this up on the screen, by the way. We're going to put it up. So if anybody doesn't hear it, they can see it.
Yeah, call my office, area code 248-433-7702, 248-433-7702, or you can email clerk@bloomfieldtwp.org and ask about becoming an election worker. One thing that we do that's also new as far as security goes is we do perform a criminal background check on everybody who wants to do this. That's a new feature that has not been done before, and most clerks don't do it, but I've implemented that because I think it's important. And we will do that check upon application and then get you through the process. I'd love to have people voting, working with us. Mostly if they actually work in the precinct, they tend to vote absentee, but you could also vote the precinct you're at.
So anybody, and I'm just going to throw this out too, that if anybody is interested, you call the number and get involved, because really it doesn't work unless all of us and all of you get involved. And yeah, no criminal records, huh? Yeah, no convictions. I'm okay.
Right. No convictions. So all the time, the law requires that people disclose whether or not they have it. We can't appoint someone who we know has a criminal conviction, but the law doesn't require us to check. So I'm checking.
Yeah, going above and beyond. That's once again, that's a hallmark of the Bloomfield Township and your elections. Now, if you've got, let's just say, like early voting starts, someone's just looking at this going, geez, I'm used to going in and waiting in line. That's what I always do. But is that how many days in advance, how many voting, real quick? I know you said so at the beginning of the program. Let's hit it again for anybody who's listening and watching. Hopefully they're getting a visual. Is that you've got, how many days is it? How many days out? When does early voting start?
So early voting starts, it's 9 days prior to election day. It's the second Saturday before every election. And I don't actually have the February date memorized, but I think it's February 15th, could be February 17th is the second Saturday before the election. It's that Saturday through the Sunday before. Early voting is not on the Monday before the election, but the 2 weekends in advance of that in the weekday, 8:30 to 4:30, Bloomfield Township Library, except for Thursday, it's noon to 8. And Township Library has been wonderful in offering their facilities and hosting us for Election Day. And I hope to see a lot of people there voting on during early voting.
Well, you usually see me on Election Day because I just like to see how the voted, even when I'm not on the ballot, which is like now. We are not no electioneering going on here. So if people think they need assistance or they need some help, or they're going to be out of town, should they call? What should they do? Should call you at the number or register? How does someone who thinks they might need some help? What should they do?
Well, the first thing they need to do is, if they are seeking an absentee ballot, anyone can do that regardless of having a reason or not. But if you need help, that's a very good reason. You can have assistance from family members to complete that ballot and to get it and return it. Non-family members can't return your absentee ballot. If just before the election, say the weekend beforehand, you have to be out of town. It's been a surprise event that takes you out of town, like a death in the family. That emergency you could also call our office, and we could provide our additional assistance. I can come out there, and or one of my staff can deliver and collect the ballots, as we are all sworn officers empowered to do that kind of work. So yes, they can call my office if they need special assistance and cannot get it through a family member. Again, that's 248-433-7702.
And we will put that up. Well, that's going to be up on the screen. So now, if you once again, people who want to volunteer, and I can't overemphasize how important it is, and it's a lot of fun. Coffee and donuts, I'm sure, and at the training too.
Yeah,
things are like a little different this year, and you were talking about some of them. Anything that the public will notice about it being different?
Primarily the ability to vote early, and the ability to take your absentee ballot and run that ballot through the tabulator yourself, instead of having to, if you decide to vote in person after receiving an absentee ballot, previously you had to cancel that ballot and be issued a new one in the precinct. Not anymore. You can take that absentee ballot and fill it out at home, bring it to the precinct, and run it through the tabulator yourself. I think people will like that feature a lot. Uh-oh, Chuck is frozen again. Now, one other thing I want to mention, and we have a lot of them here. In the past, all clerks that elected to created what's called the permanent absentee list. That list were individuals we would mail an application to every election. That's the permanent absentee list. That changed. So because of the constitutional amendment, there's a permanent ballot list. Individuals apply once to receive an absentee ballot for every election going forward, with one exception. Presidential primary elections are party-specific ballots. I can't mail you a ballot until you tell me which one, Republican or a Democrat. So right now we're waiting for there's about 12,200 people on our permanent ballot list. We've got only a couple thousand ballot selection forms back. So before we can mail you your ballot, you've got to tell us which ballot, Republican or Democrat. And there's a form that was mailed to the home of everybody on that list in the last week of December. And we're hoping to get those back real soon.
Good. Well, it's right to vote. It's important, but it doesn't work unless you actually go out and do it. And I'm going to just a real quick, anything that we should have talked about, we should have covered that we didn't, that you'd like to hit.
Well, Chuck, no, I think we did. I appreciate the time to be here with you, and always love the questions you ask. They're really good ones. And, thanks for your service representing Bloomfield Township in the past and your involvement for many, many, many decades.
Well, thank you. Complimenting the host is not mandatory, but it's always welcome. I just would simply notice that your office looks very clean. As we're starting to talk about, I suppose probably in another month or so, it's going to look like the Allied Command Post at The Longest Day for the movie. The people coming in and out. I just want to tell everybody that I'll throw this up again. Anybody, and you do not have to be a Bloomfield Township resident to volunteer and help. And so what you should do is we'll have that up on the screen. It's 433-7702
Correct.
or the website. It's Bloomfield Township. So come volunteer, help out. May get coffee and donuts, but at the very least, you're helping keep our republic functioning. Right. All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate Martin Brook, who is the Bloomfield Township Clerk, giving us the lowdown on this big election year. It is a very big election year, and it sounds like you guys are ready.
Thank you. We are.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm Chuck Moss, and thank you all for joining us here on Eye on Oakland.